What's up, everybody? This is Joe Arpasi, otherwise known as Purple Rain. For those of you that are new to my channel, I started my CFF content work back in 2008 as a co-owner of collegefootballgeek.com. I continued that work until 2016 when we shut down operations and then took some time away from the industry. I came back in 2024 under the new moniker Purple Rain, and you are watching the Let Purple Rain podcast. Please like and subscribe. You don't want to miss a single episode with all of the great content that's going to be coming here in 2025. You can also find all of my work at letpurplerain.com. You can sign up for a free 7-day trial and see everything that the site has to offer. Right now, you are watching the 2024 CFF Top Gun Challenge. This is a competition between some of the best sites on the internet to see who is the best of the best at preseason player projections. Today, we're going to review the tight end position. For the full coverage of all the statistics of the tight end competition, go to the article on letpurplerain.com. You can find a link in the description of this video. Now, let's dive into some college fantasy football. We're going to start things off by going over the CFF Top Gun Challenge Class of 2024. We have 4 amazing websites here, being led off with Campus to Canton, Let Purple Rain, RotoWire, and the CFF site. I highly recommend checking out all of these websites. You can find a link to each website in the description below, as well as in the article that's found on letpurplerain.com. Now we'll go over a quick overview of what makes up the CFF Top Gun Challenge. For a website to qualify to enter the challenge, they must provide full player stats in their preseason player projections, and they must include a minimum of 360 players in those preseason projections. The scoring that is done is pretty standard, but just to point out a couple of things that may differ from some of your home leagues, we use a 0.05 point passing yards, we use 4-point passing touchdowns, and a half-point PPR. The positions that are reviewed in the CFF Top Gun Challenge are the top 40 quarterbacks, top 60 running back and receivers, and top 20 tight ends from the 2024 college fantasy football season. As we go through, what we will do with each player is we'll calculate the difference between a website's projection and that player's actual fantasy performance from that year. A fantasy point differential will then be calculated. This is the difference between the amount that a website projected and the actual points. The lower the fantasy point differential, the more accurate that projection was. Each website then will have an average fantasy point differential calculated for all the players being reviewed in that position group. To see the full breakdown of all the players here in the tight end review, go to the link below, see the article on letpurplerain.com, and you can see a full breakdown of how every website did with every player in the top 20 tight ends. The scoring for this competition is going to be awarded off of what we are calling competition points. When a position group review is being done, the website that came in first place will get 6 competition points. Second place finish earns you 3 competition points. Third place finish offers you 1 competition point. The website with the most competition points at the end of the CFF Top Gun Challenge will be crowned the champion. Now we'll lead things off here with just some of my general thoughts about the tight end position as a whole for 2024. I'll kind of start by just commenting on myself and how I am with the position. This tends to be my weakest position to project. In my home league years ago, we got rid of the standalone tight end. We run a hybrid wide receiver tight end position, and that's really kind of taken my eye off of doing tight ends. And then, coming back this summer, doing industry work again and having to do projections, I had to knock a lot of rust off when it came to doing tight ends. And I do think that it showed, just from my personal performance, the top 10 tight ends that I had in my projections, in my draft guide, only 4 of them made the end of the season top 10. So 40% hit rate, not very good, but about, I think, how I would expect to do, looking at my past performance and how I know I am with tight ends. But then looking at the group as a whole and how these players are, I have to tell you, this was a historic year for tight end production. And it was really surprised at not just how productive a lot of players were that were surprise players, but players that we knew coming back that were going to do really good. They put up numbers that are actually historic, and I'll tap into that a little bit later in the show here. Um, but when you look at what our attitudes were for us sites and when we were making our projections and how we looked at this group in the summer, um, a lot of us saw like three standout players and then like a pretty decent sized tier below them, and then a really big tier of just kind of all the other names left. It really didn't seem like a standout year for tight ends, and it kind of seemed like if you want to grab one of those top three guys, go for it, or you're going to wait really late because it just didn't seem like it was going to be an elite year, and that proved to be quite wrong with how productive the tight end position was compared to historical norms. And to give you like an example of that, my tight end one for my draft guide, I had projected at 145 fantasy points. That was my tight end one. Six players scored more than that to finish the 2024 season. That's pretty impressive. And two players scored over 200 fantasy points. Another thing that's kind of interesting about the tight end position in general, it's always hard to get info out of summer camps about tight end position battles. Everybody wants to report on quarterbacks and running backs and the wide receivers, but the tight ends don't get enough love. And it becomes really difficult trying to figure out who's going to win in a certain position battle. And there's a number of teams this year where all four of us websites involved, we completely whiffed guessing who was going to be the tight end one. And a lot of that has to go with how hard it is to get news over the summer. Um, what's really funny here is looking at some of the numbers of the top 20 tight ends that made the competition review here. 9 of the top 20 tight ends in this review were not identified and projected by two or more of the websites involved in the competition. 10 of the top 20 tight ends that we're reviewing here were ranked outside of the preseason top 50 by consensus for all four of the websites here. So it's pretty amazing how, and you do see with tight end, there's going to be guys who pop off out of nowhere. But then just, how much it was difficult to read the tea leaves to try and figure out who's getting win the position battles, as well as just, schools that have new coaches and you're not sure what to expect. Georgia State was a great example of that. So hard to read what they were going to do offensively. Their team had been gutted by the transfer portal, and really hard sometimes to just be able to identify those guys. And these numbers, like I said, 10 of the top 20 tight ends for 2024, all four of us sites, we had them as a consensus, above ranking of 50 in the preseason. Well, we're going to dive here into the top 5 fantasy tight ends for 2024. And we're going to start off with Oronde Gadsden. I do want to mention, like I said at the top of the show, if you want to see all 20 tight ends, exactly how every single website did, you can go to the article on letpurplerain.com. There's a link in the description below, but you're going to see the same type of numbers that you're seeing on the screen right now, where you're going to see where was the projection that each website had, what was that point differential between what the player did and that website's projection, and then there will be a graphic in there showing the average point differential that the website had for all the players involved in the competition. So getting back to Gadsden here, this is probably next to Fanning. This is probably the most accurate projection of where did all of us have Gadsden ranked as a consensus, and where did he finish? And preseason rank, we all had him at number 4. He finished as a number 5 fantasy tight end. So I mean, pretty good job by us here as a group. All 4 of us sites. 2 of us, myself and CFF site, had him ranked number 1. We really liked what we thought we were going to get from him. They had a new coaching staff, changing their offense, and it was kind of difficult to guess exactly how the balls are going to get distributed. I do remember struggling a bit with how am I going to project Gadsden. And when you look at the point differentials of all 4 websites here, You notice the CFF site had the most accurate one. They were only off by 2.8 fantasy points, which is very impressive, guys. I was right behind them with 4.4 fantasy point difference. That's a pretty good job by both of us, considering the coaching changes, the offensive system change, um, and really like you're projecting a tight end like a wide receiver would have performed historically for these coaches. So it was a challenge trying to get a handle on Gadsden this year. And my hat's off to CFF site for how well they did. Um, and then looking over with the other two groups here, RotoWire kind of came in third here with 19.1 fantasy point differential, and Campus to Canton, in fourth place here with Gadsden with a 59.25 fantasy point differential. Uh, but as we switch over to number 4, we got Tanner Koziel, Ball State. He was a surprise performer, in my opinion, for just how well he did. He wasn't completely off the radar. When you look at the preseason rankings by all of the websites here on the screen, um, you had the CFF site had him at 13. RotoWire and myself, we had them in the high 20s. Campus Canton had him all the way at 55. So he was on the radar, but he definitely outperformed, and he was hands down the best guy in that passing game all year. He was my favorite fantasy guy from Ball State this year. Um, and he outperformed at such a level that every one of us websites on the screen, the fantasy point differentials are higher than our actual projected points for him, which is kind of it's a little funny and a little humbling on our end. But when you look over, who was the best at this one, CFF sites kind of taking it again with 92.6 fantasy point differential. And then you got myself from RotoWire kind of right behind him for who came in best. And Koziel, like the average rank that we all had him at was 31 preseason. Him finishing fourth is definitely a testament for how well he did during this year. Going to this year's tight end 3, we got Josh Besh from TCU. He put up 188.4 fantasy points. All of us websites, we did not have really a good consensus. And when you look at the average preseason rank of 317, I want to point out that's not exactly accurate. And I'm going to kind of dive into it here. RotoWire was the only website that did a projection on him. And every website, including RotoWire, we all tabbed Drake Dabney to be the top tight end for TCU. So one reason why you're seeing Campus to Canton, Let Purple Rain, and CFF site with no preseason projection, nothing that was on there, is we ran it on somebody else. And the truth is that RotoWire ran a tight end projection on Drake Dabney as well. Besh gets picked up because they did run a projection with him at receiver, and they had him as the 5th best receiver for TCU. That's one reason why you're seeing that fantasy projection number so low, 43.7 points. And that preseason rank, because he was lumped in with the wide receivers, his rank is 317 for the RotoWire receivers. So I do want to point out, for RotoWire's sake here, we all missed the mark on Besh. Don't look down on RotoWire because it says rank 317 tight end. It really was their 317th ranked wide receiver. I thought it might just look a little confusing if I put wide receiver on the board and just figured I'd explain it here. But Besh was just a huge miss by all of us. Came out of nowhere, and especially at the start of the season, he was a target monster. He did so well, and everyone in this top 5, they all performed at such a high level that in years past they'd be tight end ones. But like Besh here, looking at every single TCU wide receiver, only Savion Williams scored more fantasy points, and he was aided by basically playing running back toward the end of the year to bump up his points, where he just beat out Besh here for the most fantasy points for a TCU pass catcher. Switching over to tight end 2, we got Tyler Warren from Penn State, the Mr. Do Everything in the Penn State offense. I have to say, I loved watching Warren this year. He was so fun, and we had a couple tight ends who, they play tight end. They'd scheme different ways to get him the ball. Penn State ran a lot of trick plays with him. They'd let him throw the ball. He was running wildcat quarterback. It was just awesome seeing, a bulkier skill position getting to do a slash type of a role in an offense. And I just found Warren really fun to watch this year. And none of us could have predicted that role that the Penn State coaching staff put him in. And that's a huge reason why you've seen the big fantasy point differentials. None of us could have guessed that he's going to be throwing the ball, running for touchdowns, catching, running trick plays where he's being designed for wide open touchdown receptions. It was kind of crazy, and not one of us had even projected a full 100 points. Um, as I'm looking over here, RotoWire did the best with him, a 97 fantasy point projection, and then it's followed up by myself, CFF site, and Campus to Canton. Ranking wise, he was a consensus number 17. But that's kind of really being dragged down by me. I wasn't as on the ball with Warren. I was the only one who didn't have him in the teens. But what's impressive is, he scored over 200 fantasy points. And I'm going to touch on that number here as we start to talk about Harold Fanning. Fanning from Bowling Green. He was the industry consensus as the highest rated tight end in the preseason, and he way exceeded the industry projections. Every one of us, the highest projection on the board was RotoWire with 149.2 fantasy points, and then followed pretty closely behind by me at 138.6 fantasy point projection. But man, Fanning, the coaches just said, our entire passing game is going to run through him. We're going to pepper him with the ball, and nobody can defend him, which proved to be true. I mean, he just dominated the MAC this year. To let you know how historic Fanning and Warren's 200 fantasy point production was, I went back from 2023 to 2018, and I looked for any tight ends that scored 200 or more points, and it was only done once during that time period. I want to repeat that because this really is historic. Only once from 2023 to 2018 had a tight end scored 200 or more fantasy points in a half PPR. I will say that. In a half PPR. And that was Brock Bowers at Georgia in 2021. Your golden standard for dream tight end production. And Warren and Fannin shattered through those numbers. They both hit 200 points this year. That's how insane the tight end position was this year in fantasy. Two guys hit over 200 fantasy points when from 2023 through 2018, only one guy had ever done it. It's so impressive, the coaching staffs and the playing ability of Warren and Fanning this year. And Fanning, we all kind of had him ranked 1 and 3. I'm going to give a hats off to Campus to Canton and RotoWire here. They had him pegged number 1, finished number 1, far exceeding all of our expectations. Now, the next thing that we have on the list here is confirmed kills. And this is kind of a fun play on the Top Gun theme. This is where we're going to review the most accurate or one of the most accurate projections that each website did, just to shine a light on everybody involved and to see how good each of these websites can be in their preseason projections. We're going to start off here with Colston Loveland from Michigan. He finished the year with 116 fantasy points, and Campus to Canton, they had him ranked 4th. They projected him at, I'm just going to round it up and say 99, round it up, 99 fantasy points. And they were only off by 17.11 fantasy points in the differential. It's pretty impressive there. They had him ranked preseason 4, and he finished 10. As a consensus, all 4 of his sites, we had him as preseason 16. But what's a little funny here is that RotoWire, they also had a confirmed kill with Loveland. And this is really impressive by the RotoWire team. My hats off to you guys. They projected him at 116.2 fantasy points. He finished with 116. They were off by only 0.2 fantasy points, and the equivalent of 2 yards they were off by. That's really impressive, guys. Congratulations, here, RotoWire. That's some amazing work that you guys pulled off. And they also had him ranked as a preseason number 4. So both RotoWire and Campus to Canton, pretty actually, and I'll say, and CFF site. All those sites really had the same view in mind with him in the preseason. I was the one outlier here. I had him way down there, way under projected, and really the one, the website that dropped the ball pretty bad on Loveland here. Going to Let Purple Rain's confirmed kill. It's Holden Willis, Middle Tennessee. This was one of I'm going to hang my hat on, guys, from the summer. I really loved Willis. He was my preseason tight end number 2. He did finish number 6, so he did pretty well. I had him projected at 141.7 points, and he finished the year with 149.6, leaving me a fantasy point differential of 7.9, call it 8 fantasy points. Look, and I like kind of, we have a wide variety here a little bit. Like Campus to Canton was down on Willis compared to how the rest of us are. The rest of us kind of had him in the top 10. And, but Willis was one of my favorite guys. I'm really happy to see that I was able to come pretty close on the mark for how he performed. For our last confirmed kill, we're going to go with the CFF site, and they had Brant Kuthi from Utah. Kuthi was one of these guys that he got hurt during the year, and I think if he would have kept playing, you wouldn't have seen him as the best projection that CFF site had. But for this competition and for highlighting the work that those guys do over there, it kind of is fortunate for them that he was able to limit his fantasy production and that differential didn't grow anymore. He finished the year as the tight end 7. He was the preseason consensus tight end 9, and he had 118.6 fantasy points, and CFF site had him projected at 107.4 for fantasy point differential of 11.2. That was their best work that they did all year. And Keithy was another one of those guys that was fun to watch, like Warren, where they put him in the Wildcat. They let him do all sorts of stuff in the offense before he got hurt. And it was a smart move by the coaches to take one of their best players, even if he is a tight end, and just find the way to keep getting the ball in his hands over and over. So as we review the full results for this position group analysis, which once again, go to the article in the description below. You can see the full breakdown of all top 20 tight ends and to see how we got up to these average differential points. But we had CFF site coming in first place with 54.6 differential point average. RotoWire was in second with 56.14 differential point average. And Let Purple Rain in third place with 56.38 differential point advantage. And in fourth place, we have Campus to Canton with a 69.0 differential point average. As crazy as some of these numbers are that we talked about, as crazy as some of these preseason estimates and things were, or guys that we missed, or me, I was way under on like Colton Loveland, like just not even close in my projection on him. You look at CFF site, RotoWire, and Let Purple Rain, we are all within less than 2 differential point average of each other. Like that's how tight this tight end competition was for these competition points. And we didn't have another position group that we had done. This is the very first one. So our CFF Top Gun standings match what we just had here for our finishes for the tight end group. CFF site is in the lead in first place with 6 competition points. RotoWire is behind them in second with 3 competition points. Let Purple Rain is following in third with 1 competition point. And in fourth place is Campus to Canton with 0 competition points. Now, I want to thank you guys for watching the 2024 CFF Top Gun Challenge tight end review. You're seeing some of the best websites on the internet go head to head to see who's the best at preseason player projections. We've got 1 position group down. There's 3 more to go, and I am bringing on guests from all 3 of the other websites for these episodes, where we're going to be able to talk about how these guys did, how we thought about the position group as a whole, the exact same format that you saw here, but now I'm going to be bringing on guests and sharing not just my knowledge, but sharing the rest of the industry's knowledge as well. I'm going to say again, you can find full coverage for all of the articles, all the statistical breakdowns for these future coming episodes at letpurplerain.com. And we're going to be running these competition articles through December 19th. To take a peek ahead for you guys, starting in January at letpurplerain.com and here on the Let Purple Rain podcast, I'm going to be reviewing transfer portal changes, coaching carousel changes, bowl game breakout players, and what I'm excited for is my 2025 way too early player rankings. Once again, like and subscribe to this channel. I'm going to have so much cool stuff coming for you guys in 2025. I'm so excited, not just for the website, but really with this new YouTube channel. I'm so excited with what I'm going to be able to bring you guys. Talking about the website, I'm offering that 7-day free trial. You can go there, check out everything that I have to offer. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for watching along with us today, for reading everything on letpurplerain.com. You guys are the reason I'm able to keep doing this work. So once again, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me here on the Let Purple Rain podcast. Your CFF Rain starts here.